The drums began before dawn, low at first, like a warning beneath the earth, then louder, echoing through every hut and heart. The red sky had not yet broken when Obanji's drum spoke the ancient call. Awake! Something is not right. From the east side of the village, voices rose, urgent and frightened. Doors creaked open. Bare feet slapped the wet ground. Smoke from dying fires curled in the cold air as people ran toward the square. Mothers tied wrappers around their chests. Fathers grabbed their staffs. And children peeked from behind their mothers' legs. "The gods are restless," muttered one old woman, clutching her beads. But then came the sound that froze every moving foot, a cry, sharp and strange. It sliced through the morning mist like a spear. It was Nwando's voice. Her cry was not of labor, not of joy, but something deeper, something that carried shame and pain in equal measure. Birds stopped their songs. Even the wind seemed to listen. Women covered their mouths. Men exchanged uneasy glances. The air thickened with whispers. "She's in pain," someone said. "But not from labor," another added, fear trembling in their tone. Elders arrived soon after, their robes sweeping the dust. They struck their staffs on the ground, calling for silence. The drums quieted. Only the sound of Nwando's sobbing remained. Her belly was round, too round for a woman whose husband had been gone for over a year. The oldest elder, gray as moonlight, pointed a trembling finger at her. "Your husband's spirit sleeps beyond the hills of Udo, yet your belly grows, Nwando. Tell us, whose seed do you carry?" Gasps tore through the crowd. "She lies with spirits," one man shouted. "She has brought curse upon our land," cried another. Nwando fell to her knees, clutching the earth. Tears streaked her face as she cried out, "I am no witch! I swear upon my mother's grave I am no witch." But her words fell like dry seeds upon stone. The crowd had already turned. The rhythm of accusation began, harsh, heavy, alive. The villagers formed a circle around her, their faces twisted by fear and belief. They chanted, not in unity but in judgment. "Whose child do you carry? Which spirit touched you? Confess before the sun rises." Nwando's mother tried to push forward, her eyes wet with helpless love. "Please, my daughter speaks truth." "Silence, woman," barked an elder, raising his staff. "The gods speak through shame. Let her confess." Nwando's eyes darted between the angry faces and the few who pitied her. Her heart pounded louder than the drums that had summoned the village. She knew that in this moment, truth would not save her. Only silence or sacrifice could. And as the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, her tears glimmered like small flames against the dust, a woman alone in the circle of her people, wrapped not in cloth but in judgment. The drums began again, slower this time, as if the ancestors themselves were watching. Nwando's tears glistened under the morning sun, tracing silent paths down her dusty cheeks. Her voice trembled, yet she stood tall, her spirit refusing to break before the accusing eyes surrounding her. "Only my husband can plant a seed in me," she cried, her voice cracking but strong enough to echo across the gathering. "No other man has touched me." The crowd erupted in laughter, cruel, mocking, full of disbelief. Some clapped their hands, others shook their heads in pity. Children peeked from behind their mothers, wide-eyed with fear and curiosity. "Ah, hear her," shouted a young man from the back, his grin sharp as a blade. "So her dead husband's spirit visits her in the night, eh? Perhaps the ghost found his way home." Laughter rolled like thunder, but it carried no warmth. It was the laughter of disbelief, the kind that crushes truth beneath shame. Nwando's knees trembled, but her voice did not falter. "Mock me if you must," she said, her tone rising above the noise. "But the truth will find you all, and when it does, you will remember my tears." The laughter died slowly, replaced by uneasy murmurs. Even the wind seemed to hush. Somewhere an old woman whispered, "Spirits do not plant life." Or do they? Before anyone could answer, the eldest elder stepped forward. His back was bent by time, but his presence commanded silence. The staff in his hand struck the earth, once, twice, 3 times. "If your words are true, he said, his voice rough like dry wood. Then let the gods defend you, Nwando, for men may lie, but the spirits do not. He turned toward the diviner seated at the edge of the circle, an old man draped in faded red cloth, cowrie shells hanging from his neck. Let the gods speak through your hands, the elder ordered. The diviner nodded, eyes half closed. He reached into a small leather pouch and drew out a handful of cowries. With a deep breath, he whispered ancient words, then tossed them into the dust. The shells scattered, gleaming under the weak morning light. The crowd held its breath. Dust lifted, swirling like smoke around the diviner's fingers. His eyes glazed as if he stared beyond the world. No man here touched her, he murmured, voice slow and heavy. But, he paused, his brow furrowing. The mark on her womb is not of this world. A ripple of fear spread through the villagers. Not of this world? A woman gasped. Then who touched her? Another asked, clutching her chest. The diviner's hand trembled as he picked up one of the cowries and raised it to the sky. His voice deepened, filled with something not entirely human. Only one man carries the seed the gods honor, he said. Only him. The crowd stepped back as though lightning had struck between them. The air grew colder. Faces that once sneered were now carved with dread. Who is this man? Someone whispered. Why does he carry the power of the gods? Another added, voice shaking. The diviner rose slowly, lifting his staff high. His eyes blazed with unseen fire. Find him, he commanded. For the gods have chosen one among you, and his touch changes fate. The drums, which had been silent through the reading, gave a sudden low thud, deep and haunting. Every villager felt it, a pulse of fear, curiosity, and destiny. They looked around at one another, suspicion growing like a creeping vine. Somewhere among them, a man carried a power none could understand, and Nwando's name was no longer the only one whispered in fear. The crowd began to scatter, their murmurs still sharp as stones. The diviner's words hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. Nwando stood in the center of the square, her face hidden behind trembling hands. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the sky gold, but in her heart, darkness lingered. Adisa, someone whispered from the edge of the gathering. Another voice followed, quiet but sure. It must be him. The name spread through the air like wildfire. Adisa, the blacksmith. The man who once saved the chief's son. A man the gods once touched. Nwando's knees weakened at the sound. Her tears fell freely now, glistening under the new sun. Children stared. Women crossed their arms and shook their heads. Men walked away in silence, afraid of what they could not understand. As the people drifted back to their homes, one voice broke the silence. A voice half afraid, half awed. Who is this man, and why can no other match his touch? The words echoed long after the drums stopped. Even the wind carried them, whispering through the trees. Far from the noise of the village, Adisa's hammer struck iron with steady rhythm. The sound rang pure and powerful, echoing across the hills. The fire burned bright, sparks dancing like restless spirits. Sweat rolled down his face as he worked. Each strike of his hammer shaping not just metal, but destiny. He had once been called the man touched by gods. Years ago, when the chief's only son faced death, Adisa had stood between him and a striking serpent. The snake lunged, its fangs shining like twin blades. Without thought, Adisa raised his hammer. One blow, and the serpent's head lay crushed in the dust. The chief, shaken but grateful, had clasped Adisa's hands. You are not just a man, he had said. You are a vessel. The gods live in your strength. Those words had followed Adisa ever since, a blessing that felt too heavy to carry. That same moon, strange dreams began to trouble him. Drums he could not see thundered through his sleep. Shadows spoke in voices that were not human. The one who saves life, they whispered, shall give life. He woke each time drenched in sweat, staring at the firelight dancing on the walls. Days turned into moons, and the dreams continued. Nwando prayed beside him, her voice soft but steady. She had prayed for years, for children, for peace, for meaning. Each season came and went, leaving only silence in her womb. Until one dawn, Nwando gasped awake, clutching her belly. Her eyes widened as life stirred inside her for the first time. "Adisa," she whispered through tears. "I feel the river flow within me." Adisa froze, hammer slipping from his hand. He turned slowly, his breath catching. "You mean—" "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "The gods have remembered us." By midday, the village was alive with noise. Women ran through the market shouting, "Nwando is with child!" Old mothers clapped their hands and sang, "Spirits walk with that man." Even the children danced, their feet kicking up red dust in joy. But behind the laughter came whispers, quiet at first, then louder. Quiet at first, then louder. Under the great Iroko tree, the elders gathered, their voices low and cautious. "No man's seed grows after so many dry seasons," one said, stroking his beard. "Unless the gods chose him." Another elder leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "They say he dreamt of drums and shadows before the child came." A bolder one muttered, "His touch births, his shadow plants." Silence fell. The others stared at him, uneasy. But the words had already taken root. They spread across the village like harmattan fire, fast, fierce, unstoppable. By nightfall, the people spoke of Adisa not as a man, but as something greater and more dangerous. The seed of spirits, they called it. And though the moon shone bright above the quiet village, its light could not chase away the shadow of what had just begun. The moon sat high above the village, round and watchful. Beneath its glow, laughter mixed with bitterness as men gathered under the old palm tree, cups filled with wine and envy. Their words flowed sharper than their drink. "Tell me," one slurred, tapping his gourd against the ground. "What makes Adisa so special? We all have wives, yet only his womb bears fruit." Another spat into the dirt. "He must have tricked the gods. Maybe he fed them something in secret." Their laughter was hollow, full of the kind that hides pain. Behind them, their wives sat quietly, their faces still as the night, though their eyes betrayed curiosity. A few glanced toward the faint orange glow of Adisa's forge, where sparks danced like restless spirits. "The women look at him too much," one man said bitterly. "Even in the market, their eyes follow him like flies to honey." A younger man chuckled darkly. "Let them look. His luck won't last. The gods give, but they also take." That night, when the fires dimmed and the crickets sang, whispers filled the air. Women gathered in small circles, their voices low and trembling. "I saw him in my dream," one said, eyes wide. "He walked through the river without getting wet." Another gasped. "I dreamt too. His shadow touched my belly. Now I feel warmth there." "Be quiet," an elder woman hissed, her voice shaking. "Do not speak such things. The gods may hear." But it was too late. The dream spread like wildfire, from hut to hut, from wife to maiden. The man once known for his hammer now lived in their minds as both a blessing and a fear. Soon his name carried two faces. Some knelt before him when he passed, whispering prayers for fertility. Others turned away and spat behind him. "He carries both gift and curse," one old man muttered at the market. "A man who gives life can also take it." At home, Nwando watched it all unfold. She saw the way women's eyes followed her husband, the way their laughter softened when he walked by. She said nothing at first, but silence can carry more weight than words. One night, as Adisa stoked the fire in his forge, she finally spoke, her voice low but firm. "Adisa," she said, "the same people who praise you today will turn against you tomorrow." He looked up, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "Why do you say that?" "Because," she whispered, "they do not understand you. And what people do not understand, they fear." Adisa sighed, setting down his hammer. "I did not ask for this gift, Nwando. The gods chose, not me." "Then pray," she said softly, "that they do not take what they gave." Before he could answer, a shadow crossed the doorway. A messenger knelt outside, his forehead touching the ground. "Adisa, blacksmith of Obanla," he said breathlessly. "Our ruler calls for you. The chief wishes to see the man whose hands defy the spirits." Adisa wiped his hands, the faint hum of power still in the air. "Tell him I will come with the sunrise." The messenger bowed deeply and left, his footsteps fading into the night. Adisa turned back to his forge. The fire glowed brighter as if alive. He raised his hammer, struck the iron once, and in the burst of sparks, a shape appeared. A small figure, a child, glowing, pulsing, then vanishing into smoke. Nwando gasped and stepped back. The air around them shimmered like a held breath. Adisa's eyes darkened. "The gods are watching," he murmured. "Outside." The wind carried the sound of distant drums, faint, warning, alive. The night was still, and the moonlight spilled softly across the red earth, painting everything in silver and shadow. The forge was silent, its fire long asleep. Inside the hut, Adisa and Nwando rested, their breath steady, their dreams calm. But the wind outside carried a strange rhythm, the kind that makes dogs whine and palm trees bend. A gentle knock broke the silence. Once, twice, then again, like a whisper refusing to die. Adisa stirred, his eyes opening to the faint glow of the moon. He rose quietly, wrapping a cloth around his waist, and stepped toward the door. When he opened it, a woman stood before him, cloaked in the shimmer of night, beads glinting faintly under the moonlight. Her face was hidden beneath a veil, but her voice, soft and trembling, carried the weight of a plea. "Adisa," she breathed, "they say your hands hold power. They say your touch wakes sleeping wombs. Bless me. Give me what you gave your wife." Adisa froze, the words burning through the air like fire meeting oil. He took a step back, his voice low but steady. "My lady, you should not be here." Her veil shifted slightly, revealing eyes bright with desperation. "You do not understand. I have given the chief no child. I am mocked behind the palace walls. The other wives laugh when they see me. Help me, Adisa. Just once. Bless my womb as the gods blessed your wife." Adisa shook his head, his breath heavy. "I am a husband, not a god. What happened to my wife was not from my hands, but from above." Her tone changed. Desperation hardened into pride. Her voice rose, not loud but sharp as a blade. "You refuse me?" she hissed. "You, a blacksmith, deny the woman who wears the chief's beads?" Adisa's heart pounded, yet his voice did not waver. "I will not dishonor my wife, nor bring shame upon your husband. Return to your home before the night speaks of this." The woman's eyes flashed beneath her veil. She leaned closer, her voice trembling with anger. "Then let the gods judge between us. You will regret denying me, Adisa. You will regret it before the next moon." And with that, she turned, her beads clinking softly as she disappeared into the shadows. The wind followed her, whispering, curling around Adisa's hut like a spirit seeking entry. Inside, the fire trembled without touch. The air felt heavier. Even the stars seemed to blink slower. Adisa stood for a long time at the doorway, staring into the dark, until Nwando's gentle voice called from within. "Who was it, my husband?" He hesitated before replying. "Only the wind, my love." Only the wind. But he knew the wind that night carried words. Cursed words. The following moons brought change. Nwando's belly began to swell, round and full of life. The women of the village sang at first, clapping their hands and praising the gods. "Adisa's wife carries a gift of the spirits," they cried. But joy soon turned into whispers. "That belly grows too fast," muttered one woman at the well. "Maybe the gods play tricks," another answered. "Or maybe," said a third, lowering her voice, "the child inside her is not from this world at all." By night, Adisa heard the whispers in his sleep. And soon, even stranger things began. Women across Odu started waking in terror. They screamed his name in the dark. "I saw him," one shouted. "He came to me in my dream. His shadow touched me." Another wept, clutching her chest. "He laid his hand upon my belly, and I felt warmth." A third laughed wildly. The blacksmith spirit blessed me too. I am chosen. At first, Adisa tried to deny it. But when more and more women spoke, when some began to boast of dreams they should have feared, the village grew restless. The men gathered near the square, their eyes burning with anger and shame. Spears struck the earth, dust rising like smoke. Our wives dream of him, one shouted. They whisper his name at night, another added. He steals our manhood in the dark, cried a third, his voice breaking under fury. And at the heart of it all, Adisa stood, confused, trembling, surrounded by faces he once called brothers. I have done no wrong, he pleaded. The gods twist your thoughts. I am no spirit, I am a man. But the crowd roared. The chief's wife watched from afar, her veil hiding a cruel smile. The drums of anger beat louder. The air grew thick, and in the wind that swept through the crowd, a whisper carried, the same voice that had come to Adisa's door that cursed night. Did I not say you would regret it? The forge fire flickered miles away, and a shadow danced within its flames, one that looked too much like the blacksmith himself. The square of Odu was heavy with noise, a storm of voices, anger, and fear. Men beat their chests, women wailed, and children clung to their mothers. In the center of it all stood Adisa, the blacksmith whose hands once shaped hope. His chest was bare, his eyes unshaken. The flames from his forge cast his face in gold and shadow. You call me a thief of seeds, he said, his voice strong enough to still the crowd for a heartbeat. You say I steal manhood in dreams, that I plant life where no hand has touched? He raised his hammer, its metal glinting in the firelight. Then let the gods judge between truth and lies. The crowd murmured, torn between doubt and fury. Some shouted insults, others whispered prayers. The chief's wife, dressed in fine cloth and heavy beads, stepped forward. Tears glistened on her face, too bright, too ready. He touched me too, she cried, clutching her chest like a wounded dove. I kept it secret, fearing shame. But he came to me in the night. He came to me in the night. Gasps erupted. The people stepped back, their eyes wide with disbelief and fear. Mothers covered their mouths. The chief's face hardened like carved stone, his hand gripping the armrest of his stool. You? He thundered, his voice echoing through the square. My wife. She fell to her knees, her fake sobs shaking her shoulders. Forgive me, my husband. I am only a woman. I could not fight the spirit that wears a man's body. The chief rose, towering above all. His eyes burned into Adisa's soul. You dare touch what belongs to me? You mock my house and call it a blessing from the gods? Adisa stood his ground. I mock no man, and I fear no lie. Let the spirits decide this matter. Let truth walk among us. The chief turned to the elders. So be it. Tomorrow, when the sun bleeds into the sky, we call upon the spirits. If he speaks lies, let lightning claim him where he stands. The drums began, slow, deep, ancient. Each beat felt like the heartbeat of the gods themselves. The crowd bowed their heads as the chief's guards led Adisa away, but even as they bound his hands, his eyes held calm, the calm of a man who knows his truth. When the next evening came, the sky hung low with gray clouds, and thunder rumbled like a beast waking from sleep. The elders gathered beneath the old Iroko tree, their faces painted with white chalk. The diviner, a frail man whose eyes looked both old and young, stepped into the open space. He drew a wide circle with ash, palm wine, and white chalk, symbols of purity, power, and truth. Spirits of the wind, of earth, of fire, he chanted, his voice trembling like a reed in the storm. Open your eyes tonight. Let truth shine and falsehood burn. Adisa stepped forward, barefoot, unbound. His feet pressed into the cool earth as the wind whipped his clothes. He raised his eyes to the heavens. If I lie, he said clearly, let the thunder burn my bones. But if I speak truth, let your fire strike false hearts instead. The sky growled, long, deep, and angry. The people gasped. Women clutched their children. Even the chief's wife trembled, though she tried to hide it. Then, a flash. A blinding white light tore across the sky. Thunder cracked so loud the ground shook. A tree beside Adisa burst into flame. its bark splitting, fire roaring to life as the crowd screamed and fell to their knees. The diviner's staff snapped in two. Adisa stood untouched, the flames reflecting in his eyes. For a heartbeat, everyone saw him, framed in fire, unburned, calm as the gods themselves. The chief staggered back, fear creeping into his proud face. His wife collapsed, her beads scattering in the dust. "The gods have spoken," cried an elder, voice breaking. "He is not guilty." But even as the crowd gasped and murmured, the thunder rolled again, softer this time, almost like a warning. And from the burning tree, ashes rose high into the dark sky, carried by the wind. "Toward the chief's house," the people whispered. "The fire did not strike the lyre," one said. "No," another replied, voice trembling. "It waits for her." The storm began to fade. But everyone knew. The gods were not done speaking. Smoke coiled like restless spirits around Adisa, yet not a strand of his hair burned, not a thread on his cloth singed. His skin glowed in the firelight as the villagers watched with wide eyes, breath caught between fear and wonder. Slowly, he lifted his hand, the hammer still warm in his palm. "The gods have spoken," he said, his voice steady as thunder after rain. Truth does not burn. A deep silence fell. Even the wind seemed to pause. The diviner, trembling, dropped to his knees, his white chalk-stained fingers clutching the earth. "The gods protect the one they sent," he declared. "No mortal fire touches the chosen," the crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others crossed themselves in fear. The chief's guards exchanged uneasy glances, their spears lowering as whispers spread like fire through dry grass. From behind the line of elders, the chief's wife stood frozen. Her beads slipped from her wrist, scattering across the dirt like the lies she had spoken. Her painted face turned pale as whispers rose around her. "The liar has cursed herself," someone murmured. "Her words brought her ruin," another said. The chief's wife covered her face and fled from the circle, her wails echoing through the night. Her voice carried far beyond the huts, a sound of shame that clung to the air long after she was gone. Adisa lowered his hammer. He looked not proud, but weary, a man carrying the weight of something larger than himself. Nwando stood in the distance, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. She knew this victory would not bring peace. The same tongues that praised her husband today would curse him tomorrow. As dawn painted the sky red, the village was split in two. Some bowed when Adisa passed, whispering, "The gods walk with him." Others turned their faces away, muttering, "No man should hold such power." Days passed like slow fire. The people's fear grew roots. Then, one night, a cry tore through the village again, high, piercing, filled with terror. The chief's second wife staggered into the open square, clutching her belly. "Something moves inside me," she screamed. Her body twisted, her eyes wide with horror. Women ran forward but stopped halfway, fear pinning them to the ground. "She only touched Adisa once," one whispered. "Just his hand when he blessed the chief." The old women hissed prayers under their breath. "No man carries such power unless the spirits guide him," one said, shaking her head. Men stood still, their faces hard, their voices low. "If he can give life with his touch," one muttered, "then who among us is safe from his shadow?" The drums that usually beat through the night fell silent. Even the crickets hid their song. The only sound that remained was the chief's wife crying in the dark, and the quiet fear crawling through every heart. By the next morning, no one dared to look at Adisa directly. The blacksmith's forge was cold, and his hammer lay untouched. Nwando sat beside him in silence, her hand resting on his, both knowing that the fire that proved his innocence had now lit a fear too strong to quench. The air grew heavy, thick with fear and dust. The chief's second wife screamed again, clutching her stomach as it rose and swelled before the crowd's eyes. Her belly grew round like a storm cloud ready to burst. The villagers gasped and stepped back, crossing themselves. Children cried. Women hid behind their wrappers. Even the wind seemed to run from what was happening. "Call the diviner," an elder shouted. The gods are not at rest. Someone whispered, the spirits are angry. No woman's belly grows that fast unless something beyond the flesh has touched her. The chief's wife fell to her knees, moaning as her beads rattled against the ground. Her eyes rolled and foam gathered at her lips. Help me, I beg you, she cried. When the diviner arrived, his white robe trailed through the dust. He stared at the woman, his face dark with knowing. But before he could speak, she gasped, her trembling hand reaching toward the chief. I drank the potion, meant for his wife, she confessed, voice breaking between sobs. I wanted her womb to dry, so I could give him a child. The crowd froze. Even the chief's guards took a step back. What have you done? The chief whispered, his voice trembling like dry leaves. Tears rolled down her face. But the potion twisted. Now I bear the mark of spirits. Something grows in me that is not of man. A deep gasp tore through the crowd. The diviner's staff shook in his hands. His eyes widened, face turning pale like ash. Foolish woman, he hissed. That potion was forbidden. You have called the gods with greed. Lightning flashed across the sky and thunder rolled like drums of war. The villagers screamed, scattering in panic. Palm trees swayed, and the earth itself seemed to breathe with anger. The chief turned to the diviner, his face wet with sweat and fear. Tell us the truth, old man, he shouted over the rumbling sky. Who is Adisa? What spirit walks in that man? The diviner closed his eyes. His body began to tremble as if another voice spoke through him. His pupils turned white, his tone deep and hollow. Years ago, he began, when Adisa saved your son from the forest, he was bitten by the serpent of Allah, goddess of life. That serpent carried the seed of the gods. The crowd erupted in cries. A man bitten by a god serpent? One shouted. No wonder fire fears him. Another cried. An old woman wailed. The soil obeys his hand because it knows its master. Thunder struck again, shaking the huts. The chief fell to his knees, staring into the dark clouds above. Then we have been fighting the one chosen by the gods, he whispered. But the diviner did not answer. His head bowed low, his staff planted in the ground, as if he too feared the truth that had been born into the world. And above them, the storm raged louder, as though the gods themselves were watching. The storm raged above them, and the diviner's trembling voice carried through the roar of thunder. His eyes glowed with something not of this world. From that day, he said, his blood turned sacred. The serpent of Allah did not poison him, it blessed him. His touch brings life where there is emptiness, and his hands are bridges between the mortal and the divine. The villagers fell to their knees. Some wept, some hid their faces, while others whispered, He carries the breath of the gods. Adisa stood frozen. Rain streaked down his face, washing the dirt from his skin, but his eyes stared at his trembling palms. So, he whispered, voice breaking, my curse was never mine? The diviner nodded slowly, his white chalk-stained lips trembling. The gods chose you not to punish, but to remind men that even in darkness there is a seed of creation. Adisa's breath hitched. Remind them? Of what? That life and death are one, the diviner said, voice like wind through dry leaves. That power is not pride, and blessings are not without burden. A loud crack of lightning split the sky, and the diviner suddenly lifted his staff. But beware, he shouted. If the gift is misused, the spirits will take what they gave. The gods give to teach, not to serve man's greed. Before Adisa could answer, a scream tore through the storm. The chief's wife arched backward, her eyes wide, mouth open, but no sound came out now. Thunder rolled like 100 drums, and when the light faded, she was gone. Only ashes remained where her body had been. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the chief fell to his knees, his voice breaking. The gods have judged, he said. May her soul find no deceit in the afterworld. Then, another cry split the air, but this one came from the direction of Adisa's hut. Adisa! It was Nwando's voice, sharp with pain and fear. Adisa, the baby is coming! Adisa turned and ran through the mud, his heart pounding louder than the thunder. Women rushed after him, carrying water and cloth. Rain lashed their faces, and lightning painted the night in blue fire. Inside the hut, Nwando writhed on the mat, sweat gleaming on her skin. The diviner entered, chanting under his breath, "Spirits of life, guide her path. Do not let the storm steal what belongs to the earth." Adisa knelt beside her, gripping her hand. "Hold on, Nwando," he whispered. "The gods are watching." The storm outside grew wilder, wind shrieking as if the heavens themselves were pushing against fate. And then, two cries rose through the thunder, one soft, gentle as morning dew, the other sharp, fierce, and loud as the sky itself. The women gasped. "Twins," one whispered. "A boy and a girl." Adisa looked down. One child had skin marked with faint, glowing lines that shimmered like lightning under her touch, while the other looked perfectly human, eyes calm as still water. The diviner raised his staff once more. "The gods have spoken," he said. "From storm and sorrow, life has been reborn. But remember, balance must be kept, for where the divine walks among men, the earth will always tremble." Outside, the storm began to fade, but its echo lingered in the hearts of all who witnessed the birth. The day a man became more than mortal, and his children carried the whisper of gods in their veins. The rain had slowed, leaving the earth damp and glistening under the first light of dawn. The villagers still trembled, eyes wide, mouths hushed. In the center, the diviner stood tall, his staff raised high, voice carrying with a solemn weight. "The gods have spoken," he declared, eyes shining with unworldly light. "One child for the earth, one for the sky. Their bond will keep balance or destroy it. Mark this day, for it is not the work of men, but of the spirits who watch over us." The chief, his shoulders heavy with the burden of judgment, lowered his staff. His voice shook as he spoke, deep with humility. "Forgive us," he said, bowing low before Adisa. "We judged what we did not understand. We feared the unknown, and it led us to shame." Adisa stepped forward, rain dripping from his hair, and lifted the twins into the rising sun. His hands, strong and steady, held the children close. "If the gods chose me," he whispered, voice carrying over the still damp square, "then let my children be the bridge between worlds, the earth and the sky, life and spirit past and future." Lightning split the sky once more, bright and fierce, illuminating the twins' faces. One remained calm, serene as the first morning, while the other glowed faintly, streaks of light dancing across her skin. The villagers gasped, a chant rising spontaneously from the crowd. "The chosen blood! The chosen blood!" Women wept softly, men bowed their heads, and children clutched each other, eyes wide with awe. The diviner lowered his staff, his face a mask of satisfaction and warning. "Remember this night," he said. "The gods have marked their children. Watch and do not falter, for the balance they carry is fragile." As the storm clouds receded, smoke curling from burnt trees and scattered huts, the first rays of sunlight kissed the village. Whispered voices traveled from hut to hut. The night of the gods has passed, but their work remains. Inside Adisa's hut, Nwando cradled the twins against her chest, tears mingling with the rain on her face. One child's eyes were calm, the other's faintly glowing as if the storm had left a piece of its fire within her. Adisa knelt beside his wife, pride and fear mingling in his chest. "They are alive," he murmured, voice soft with reverence, "and they carry more than we can ever understand." Nwando smiled through exhaustion, her hands tracing the glowing lines across her daughter's skin. "They are our children," she said, voice steady, "but they are also the gods' gift to the world. May we honor them well." The village slowly began to stir, whispers of the miraculous night spreading like wind through the trees. The legend of Adisa, the blacksmith chosen by the gods, the man whose blood carried life, had begun. From that morning onward, every eye turned toward the twins, every ear listened for the drumbeats that echoed their story, and every heart remembered that power, when given by the gods, was both blessing and warning. The villagers gathered in the square, eyes wide, mouths half open, whispers weaving like smoke through the crowd. The twins, calm and glowing, rested in Wando's arms as she and Adisa stood at the hut's threshold. "They are not children. They are signs," muttered one elder, spitting on the ground as if to ward off ill fortune. Another shook his head, voice trembling. "Nothing good comes from spirits. The gods play in ways humans cannot see." The chief approached slowly, flanked by his guards, their spears gleaming in the morning sun. He bowed his head slightly before Adisa, voice steady but full of awe. "You have faced the gods and lived," he said. "Let me reward your strength and courage. Gold, land, anything you desire." Adisa shook his head, calm and resolute. "Riches fade, chief. Power changes men. I only ask for peace. A man should not be worshipped for what he cannot explain. Let the gods judge, not men." The diviner stepped forward, staff in hand, eyes still reflecting the storm's glow. "Wisdom speaks through humility," he said softly, voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "The gods test the proud but walk beside the humble. Remember this, all of you," murmurs rippled through the villagers. Some called Adisa a savior, their voices filled with hope. Others shook their heads, whispering that his family would bring misfortune, that the mark of the gods could not be contained by mortal hands. The chief raised his staff, trying to quiet the stirrings of fear and envy, but even he could not calm every heart. At dawn, the first rays of light glimmered on the dew-soaked earth as Adisa and Nwando packed their few belongings. Nwando paused at the hut's doorway, looking back at the village one last time. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper meant for herself. "They will never understand," she said, eyes misting with sadness and resolve. Adisa rested a hand on her shoulder, feeling the weight of the world and the blessing that bore their children. Together, they stepped onto the path leading from the village, the twins swaddled between them, shadows stretching long across the red earth. The drums of the village were silent now, replaced by the gentle whisper of wind through the trees. A quiet farewell, and the beginning of a new chapter beyond human fear and envy. Drums beat faintly behind the trees, their rhythm carried on the wind as Adisa leads Nwando and the twins along the narrow path out of the village. The sunlight filters through the leaves, dappled and shifting, as if the forest itself watches their passage. Adisa bends slightly, speaking softly to the children cradled in Nwando's arms. "Your path will be long, but it will heal the earth," he whispers. "Remember, the gift we carry is not for pride, but for life." The forest swallows them in its green embrace. They find a clearing by a river, its waters clear and singing over smooth stones. Here they build a small hut, strong yet simple, and Adisa returns to his work as a smith. Sparks fly from the hammer, casting shadows like spirits dancing on the hut walls. He teaches the twins the old ways, showing them respect for the river, the trees, and the unseen powers that watch over life. Years pass like shadows stretching at sunset. The twins grow under the forest's protection, one quiet, eyes deep with thought, moving gently among the plants and creatures. The other is alive with light, laughter spilling into the trees, skin faintly marked with the glow of their father's blessing. Villagers far away still whisper the story of the blacksmith who walked with the gods, of his children who carry his power. Word travels quickly when the boy with the markings begins to heal the sick. He touches the fevered and they rise. He lays hands on the parched, and they drink deeply of life renewed. People call him Olu, the gift reborn, and his name spreads as a whispered prayer across the lands. One night, shadows from the past arrive. A group from the old village stands at their clearing, gaunt and desperate, seeking the miracle they once scorned. Nwando's eyes fill with tears as she recognizes the same faces that cursed them years ago. She kneels, offering water and care, and the forest holds its breath. Under a sky littered with stars, Adisa lies beside the fire, the twins sleeping near their mother. He takes Olu's hand gently, feeling the pulse of power that is no longer just his. "A man's gift is not his own," he murmurs, voice low but firm. "Use it wisely, or lose your soul." As dawn breaks, Adisa's eyes close peacefully. The wind whispers through the trees like distant drums, carrying the echo of his life across the forest. When news reaches the village, mourning follows. We chased away the blessing sent to save us, the elders say. They finally understand the cost of envy, the weight of fear, and the folly of mocking what they could not comprehend. Years later, Olu returns, hands glowing softly, yet calm. I come not for revenge, he tells the villagers, but for healing. The ground that once bore curses blooms anew. Flowers rise between burnt branches, rivers flow stronger, and the people bow, chanting Adiza's name. The drums return, measured and deep, calling across the valley. The storyteller's voice rises. The gods speak not in thunder, but in the silence that follows. When men envy another's blessing, the narration continues, peace runs from their homes. When pride blinds the eyes, even blessings feel like curses. The elders' voices echo in the wind. Respect what you do not understand, whispers the diviner's spirit. For power that gives life can also take it away. Nwando bends to the twins, now grown, teaching them what their father embodied. Your father's heart was pure, she says. That is why the gods trusted his blood. Olu lifts his hands toward the sky, light glimmering from his markings. No gift is mine alone. I heal not with power, but with purpose. When jealousy rules men, peace runs from their homes, the narrator concludes. Honor the gift. Respect the mystery, for the hand that gives life can also take it away. The drums grow softer and softer until silence fills the forest. Only the whisper of the wind remains, carrying Adisa's name through generations, a legend etched into the heart of the earth itself.